My name is Victoria Lane. I'm 35 years old. At 9:42 on a Tuesday morning in August, an IRS agent sat across from me in a federal office building, slid a folder across a gray conference table, and asked one question that made my parents' entire story fall apart. "Ms. Lane, did you authorize this transfer?" The room was cold enough that my fingers felt stiff around the paper cup of coffee I had not touched. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside the narrow window, downtown Columbus moved in ordinary morning traffic, unaware that my family's lies had finally been printed on government stationery. I looked down at the document. A wire transfer. $185,000. From the estate account of my late grandfather, Arthur Lane. To an LLC called BrightBell Media, the memo line read, "Victoria Lane Distribution per Family Agreement." My signature appeared at the bottom, except it was not my signature. Not even close. It was a careful, pretty version of my name, the kind someone would write if they had seen my Christmas cards but never watched me sign mortgage forms, tax returns, or hospital consent paperwork. The V was too round. The L was too dramatic. The line under my name was something I had never done in my life. Across from me, Agent Marisol Vega waited. She had dark hair pulled into a low bun, a navy blazer, and the patient expression of a woman who had learned that people either told the truth quickly or eventually. Beside her sat a younger agent with a laptop, typing without looking at me. I thought about my mother telling me, "Victoria, don't be bitter. Money is just money." I thought about my father saying, "Your sister needed this chance more than you did." I thought about my sister Madison, standing in front of a pink neon sign that said, "Build your dream life," filming herself opening PR boxes purchased with money my grandfather had left for me. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I did not call my parents from the parking lot and warn them that the federal government had found the seam. I just placed my hand flat beside the transfer and said no. Agent Vega looked at me. "No, I did not authorize it. No, that is not my signature. And no, there was no family agreement." The younger agent stopped typing for 1 second. Agent Vega opened the folder another inch. What they didn't know was that for 18 months, I had kept every estate email, every voicemail, every bank notice, every screenshot of Madison's brand purchases, and every message where my parents told me to stop asking about the money because I was embarrassing the family. And in that office, with one question, the entire thing became impossible to hide. This is that story. Before I tell you how my parents' attempt to fund my sister's influencer fantasy turned into an audit, a fraud referral, and a family meeting nobody could filter, tell me where you are watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment someone treated their patients like permission. And if you connect with stories about women who were betrayed, underestimated, stolen from, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not post receipts. Some women keep them for the IRS. I grew up in Westerville, Ohio, in a 2-story brick house on Clover Mill Drive, with white columns, a basketball hoop over the garage, and a kitchen island my mother called the heart of the home, even though most of the serious conversations happened in the laundry room, where nobody else could hear. My father, Richard Lane, spent 37 years as a regional manager for a hardware distribution company. He was practical, punctual, and deeply proud of never missing a day of work unless a doctor used the word emergency in writing. My mother, Diane, taught second grade for 25 years and had the kind of sweet public voice that made people trust her before they noticed she used guilt like a paper cut. They had 2 daughters. I was the oldest. Victoria. Responsible. Quiet. Organized. The one who remembered to renew the car tags, helped Dad set up online banking, proofread Mom's school newsletter, picked up prescriptions for my grandmother, and somehow became the family's unpaid administrative department before I was old enough to rent a car. My sister Madison was 4 years younger and had been described as creative since the first time she spilled glitter glue into the carpet and cried before anyone could be angry. Madison was beautiful in the way cameras loved. Soft blonde hair, green eyes, perfect skin, and the instinctive knowledge that if she tilted her chin and widened her eyes, Adults would start explaining consequences in gentler language. When she forgot homework, teachers said she had imagination. When she wrecked mom's car at 19 because she was filming a singing video at a stoplight, Dad said, "She scared herself enough." When she dropped out of college after 3 semesters, Mom said, "Traditional paths don't fit every spirit." When I worked 2 jobs during grad school, nobody called me spirited. They called me reliable. Reliability in my family meant you were strong enough to go without. Madison needs encouragement. Victoria understands. Madison is finding herself. Victoria has always been independent. Madison is sensitive. Victoria can handle it. Those phrases became the furniture of my life. So familiar I stopped noticing how often I bruised myself on them. My grandfather, Arthur Lane, was the one person who noticed. He was my father's father, a retired postal supervisor with square hands, a silver crew cut, and a habit of carrying peppermints in the front pocket of his plaid shirts. Grandpa Arthur lived in a small ranch house in Worthington, 15 minutes from us, with a vegetable garden in the back and a workbench in the basement where every jar of screws was labeled. He liked order, but not the kind my parents liked. My parents liked order because it kept appearances neat. Grandpa liked order because it kept people honest. The symbolic object he left me was a red ledger book with a cracked spine, and his initials written inside the cover, AEL. He used it for everything: garden expenses, birthday gifts, car repairs, Christmas checks, names of neighbors who borrowed tools, donations to the Veterans Hall. When I was little, I used to sit beside him at the kitchen table while he wrote numbers in neat columns with a mechanical pencil. "Always write it down, Vicky," he told me. Not because people are bad, because memory is convenient and paper is not. At 12, I thought that was just an old man's habit. At 35, it saved me. Grandpa Arthur did not dislike Madison. He loved her. He came to every recital, every art fair, every dramatic announcement that she was starting over. But he did not confuse love with blindness. When Madison announced at 26 that she was launching a lifestyle brand called BrightBell, Grandpa asked, "What are you selling?" Madison laughed. "Not selling, Grandpa, influencing." He looked at me across the table and said, "That sounds like selling without inventory." I nearly choked on my iced tea. Madison did not laugh. BrightBell began as an Instagram account with pastel graphics and captions about romanticizing your routine. Then it became a YouTube channel, a TikTok page, a newsletter, a podcast nobody asked for, and finally, an LLC, because Madison said serious brands needed structure. The brand had a logo before it had revenue, a blush pink bell with a little sparkle. Madison filmed morning routines in matching silk pajamas, apartment resets in a condo my parents helped pay for, grocery hauls from stores she could not afford, and videos about, quote, building generational wealth as a feminine entrepreneur, while Dad quietly covered her car insurance. I worked as a compliance analyst for a medical billing company. My job was not glamorous. I reviewed claims, audit trails, documentation, internal controls, and suspicious billing patterns. I spent my days asking questions that made people uncomfortable because the answers protected everyone later. My family found this irritating. "Victoria always thinks everything is a case file," Madison said once at Thanksgiving, waving her wine glass. I said, "Only when people keep changing the numbers." Nobody laughed except Grandpa. The first time money disappeared in Madison's direction, I was 28. My parents had promised to help me with the closing costs on a small townhouse. Not a gift exactly. They said they wanted to contribute $12,000 because they had done the same for Madison's condo deposit the year before. 3 days before closing, Dad called. "Vicky, we need to delay the help." I was sitting in my car outside the inspection office. "Delay how long?" Madison had an emergency business expense. What emergency? She had already committed to a brand retreat. A vacation? It's networking. I closed my eyes. "Dad, my closing is Friday." "I know, but you're good with planning. You'll figure it out." I did. I pulled from savings, skipped furniture, and ate rice and eggs for 6 weeks. Madison posted retreat photos from Scottsdale under the caption, invest in rooms your future self deserves. The second time was when Grandpa gave each of us $5,000 for Christmas, 4 years before he died. He handed the checks in envelopes after dinner. Mine had a note that said, "For the house, or the future, or anything that makes you breathe easier." I cried in the bathroom where no one could see. 2 weeks later, Mom asked if I could temporarily lend my $5,000 to Madison because Madison's brand photographer needed a deposit for a campaign shoot. I said no. Mom's face changed like I had slapped her. "Victoria, you have a stable job." Madison has a job too, apparently. That was unnecessary. So is asking for my Christmas gift. Dad later told me I had made Mom cry. Madison posted the photos anyway. My parents paid. The third time was after Grandpa's first fall. He was 84 then, still sharp but slower. I became the one who took him to appointments because Dad said work was busy and Mom said hospitals made her anxious. Madison visited sometimes, usually with a camera angled away from the pill bottles and toward whatever tea mug looked most cozy. One afternoon, Grandpa asked me to bring the red ledger from his desk. He opened to a fresh page. Estate notes. He wrote at the top, "Grandpa," I said softly, "don't start. I'm old, not confused." I sat beside him. He tapped the pencil once. I changed the will. I looked at him. "You don't have to tell me." "I know. That's why I am." He explained it plainly. His house would be sold, with part of the proceeds going to my father. A set amount would go to veterans, charities. Smaller gifts would go to cousins. Madison would receive $75,000 in trust, distributed over time, because he did not trust her business appetite. I would receive $225,000 outright. My throat tightened. "Grandpa, that's too much." "No, it isn't. It will cause problems." He looked at me over his glasses. "Problems are often truth arriving without makeup." I almost smiled. He continued, "Your father will be executor. That is the mistake I am making, because he is my son. But I have copied the lawyer's instructions, and I want you to keep this." He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a copy of the will summary, the attorney's card, and a handwritten note. "Victoria, if numbers change, ask for paper." That note became the second object I carried through the story. The inheritance fight began before Grandpa was even buried. He died on February 3rd, at 2:15 in the morning, after a short final illness that was merciful only in comparison to worse things. I was there. Dad was there. Mom arrived 20 minutes later because she had stopped to change clothes. Madison came at noon and filmed a black and white photo of his garden gate with the caption, "Grief comes in waves." At the funeral lunch, Madison sat beside Mom, dabbing her eyes and talking about how Grandpa believed in dreams. Dad accepted condolences with a stiff face. I stood near the coffee urn refilling cups, because grief makes me useful when I do not know what else to do. 3 weeks later, Dad called me to the house for a family estate discussion. I brought Grandpa's envelope in my tote. Madison arrived late, wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a matcha latte. Mom had made chicken salad sandwiches. Dad sat at the kitchen island with a folder. He cleared his throat. "Your grandfather left some money." Madison leaned forward. "How much?" Mom touched her arm. "Sweetheart." Dad continued. "The estate will take time, but there are distributions outlined." He did not look at me. That was when I knew. "Madison," he said, "Grandpa set aside $75,000 for you." Her mouth opened. "That's it?" Mom said, "Madison." Dad looked uncomfortable. For Victoria, he designated $225,000. The kitchen went silent. Madison took off her sunglasses. "Why?" "Not congratulations. Not good for you. Why?" Dad said. "He had his reasons." Madison looked at me. "Did you ask him for that?" I laughed once. "No." "You were always over there." "He was elderly." "You had access." I looked at Dad. He looked at the folder. Mom said, "Victoria, try to understand how this feels for your sister." I sat back. There it was. Grandpa dead 3 weeks, and already my job was to make Madison comfortable with my inheritance. I said, "Grandpa made the decision." Madison's eyes filled. He punished me because he didn't understand my career. I did not answer. Dad sighed. "We're not making decisions today. Nothing is final yet." I looked at him. The will is final, isn't it? He avoided my eyes. There are administrative matters. Grandpa's note seemed to warm inside my tote. If numbers change, ask for paper. So I did. Can I have a copy of the will? Dad's jaw tightened. You don't need to start legalizing the family. I'm asking for a document. Mom looked wounded. Victoria, your father just buried his father. And I just buried my grandfather. Madison whispered, unbelievable. That was the beginning. For months, every request for information became an attack. I emailed Dad asking for estate timelines. He called instead of replying. I asked for copies of probate filings. Mom said I was making him feel mistrusted. I contacted Grandpa's attorney, Mr. Lionel Price, but because Dad was executor, Mr. Price could provide only certain information directly unless I formally asserted rights as a beneficiary. I did not want to sue my father. That was the hook they counted on. Meanwhile, Madison's brand changed overnight. BrightBell Media suddenly had a new office studio downtown with pink velvet chairs, arched mirrors, and custom neon signage. Madison hired 2 assistants, bought a $9,000 camera setup, launched a digital course called Soft CEO Society, and posted a video titled, I Finally Invested Big in My Dream. I watched it at my desk during lunch. She stood in front of a wall of pastel shelves and said, sometimes the universe opens a door when you stop thinking small. I looked at the $1 200 blazer she wore and wondered whether Grandpa had become the universe. By June, Madison hosted a launch brunch at the Ivory Hotel. I was not invited, but Mom sent me photos, so you can feel included. There were flower walls, branded macarons, champagne flutes, and a table of gift bags containing silk eye masks, planners, and candles, labeled Main Character Energy. The comments on Madison's post were full of fire emojis and women asking how she funded the expansion. Madison replied, alignment. I screenshotted it. Not because I knew yet, because some part of me had started listening to Grandpa. By August, I still had not received my distribution. Dad kept saying the estate account was settling. Then an envelope arrived from North Star Bank addressed to me, forwarded from Grandpa's estate mailing list. It contained a beneficiary notice confirming a distribution had been processed, $185,000. Recipient, Victoria Lane. Account ending, 4,482. I did not recognize the account. I called North Star Bank at 3:22 that afternoon and was told they could not discuss details because the executor had submitted authorization. I asked for a copy of the transfer paperwork. They said I would need to request it through the executor, so I emailed Dad. This time, I wrote clearly, Dad, I received a notice from North Star Bank showing a distribution to me for $185,000, but I did not receive this money and do not recognize the account. Please send the transfer authorization, account details, and estate accounting by Friday. He called 11 minutes later. I did not answer. He texted, this is not something to put in writing. I stared at that sentence. Then I screenshotted it. The breaking point came that night at my parents' house. Mom said it was better to discuss things face-to-face, like family. I arrived at 7 o'clock with Grandpa's red ledger in my tote, along with copies of every email I had sent. Madison was there, which told me the meeting had never been about clarity. She sat at the kitchen island wearing a cream sweater, gold hoops, and the soft, wounded face she used when preparing to be defended. Dad looked older than usual. Mom had made tea nobody drank. I set the North Star notice on the counter. Where is the money? Dad rubbed his forehead. Victoria, it was redirected. To whom? He did not answer. Madison said, you make everything sound criminal. I looked at her. Where is my inheritance? Mom stepped in. Your sister's company needed bridge funding. Your father and I made a family decision. I turned slowly toward her. My inheritance was not family money. Dad said, it was Grandpa's wish that both of you be secure. No, Grandpa wrote amounts. Madison snapped, because you poisoned him against me. Madison, Dad warned, but softly, always softly. Mom said, BrightBell had real potential, Victoria. Madison had investors watching. If she missed the window, everything could collapse. Did you forge my signature? Dad's face went pale. Mom whispered, don't use that word. What word should I use? Madison stood. You were going to waste it on a house or retirement or something boring. I looked at my sister. Something in me went very still. You took it. She rolled her eyes. Mom and Dad reallocated it, temporarily. To your company? To an investment in my future. I looked at Dad. Did you wire my inheritance to BrightBell Media? He stared at the counter. Yes. There it was. Not the full truth, but a doorway. I pulled out my phone and pressed record openly. Please say that again. Dad's head jerked up. Victoria. No, say it again if it was legal. Mom began crying. Madison said, This is disgusting. I looked at her. What is disgusting is filming yourself opening PR boxes paid for with money Grandpa left me. Her face changed. For 1 second, she looked afraid. Then Dad said, Enough. We did what we thought was best for the family. I placed Grandpa's handwritten note on the counter. If numbers change, ask for paper. Dad looked at it and closed his eyes. Mom whispered, He gave you that? Yes. The room shifted. For the first time, my parents understood that Grandpa had expected exactly this. I gathered my papers. Victoria? Mom said, Please don't tear this family apart over money. I looked at her. No, you tore it. I'm just asking for the accounting. After that night, I stopped asking by phone. I sent formal letters. I hired an attorney named Ellen Mercer, who specialized in probate disputes and tax issues. She was 56, calm, unsentimental, and had silver reading glasses she used like punctuation. In her office, I spread everything across the conference table. Grandpa's will summary, his note, the North Star notice, my emails, Dad's text saying not in writing, screenshots of BrightBell's sudden expansion, Madison's public posts. My recording of Dad admitting funds had been redirected. Ellen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, Your father may have breached fiduciary duties as executor. If your signature was forged, that is another matter. If estate distributions were misreported for tax purposes, that is another door. I swallowed. I don't want him in prison. I didn't say prison. I don't want my family destroyed. She leaned forward. Victoria, your family is already operating inside the destruction. You are deciding whether to turn the lights on. By the following Monday, Ellen requested a formal estate accounting. Dad did not respond. She filed a petition with probate court. That got his attention. Mom called me crying. Madison posted a vague quote. Some people would rather see you fail than watch you rise. I screenshotted it. The court ordered Dad to produce documents. What came back was incomplete, pages missing, vague categories, beneficiary distribution, business investment, family allocation. It was the kind of accounting that looked neat until someone who worked in compliance read it with a pencil. I found the first inconsistency in 12 minutes. The estate ledger showed $185,000 distributed to me on May 2nd. BrightBell's state business filing showed a capital infusion on May 4th. Madison's studio lease deposit cleared May 5th. Her equipment invoices were dated May 7th. Her brand retreat at the Ivory Hotel was paid May 9th. The numbers did not merely rhyme, they sang. Ellen sent a second demand. Dad's attorney responded that I had verbally agreed to support family business development in lieu of immediate distribution. That sentence made me laugh out loud in my kitchen. Then I cried, because it was absurd, and because my own father had allowed an attorney to put it in writing. By winter, BrightBell was collapsing. Madison's course launch failed. The studio lease was too expensive. The assistants quit. A vendor sued for unpaid event costs. Customers requested refunds for coaching sessions Madison never delivered. Her followers began noticing that her soft CEO advice mostly involved spending money she did not earn. Then tax season arrived. Because Dad had reported estate distributions incorrectly. Because BrightBell had claimed certain funds as business investment. Because Madison deducted expenses tied to personal lifestyle content. And because the transfer carried my name in one place and BrightBell's account in another, the money trail triggered questions. At first it was a letter. Then another. Then Ellen received notice that the IRS wanted to interview me as part of an examination involving estate distribution reporting and BrightBell Media's filings. Mom said, "Just tell them it was a family misunderstanding." Ellen said, "You will tell the truth and only the truth." So on that Tuesday morning in August, I sat across from Agent Vega. She asked one question: "Did you authorize this transfer?" "No." The rest followed, because one clean answer often pulls the thread. Agent Vega asked whether I had received the funds. No. Whether I had signed the authorization. No. Whether I had given verbal consent. No. Whether there was a family agreement. No. Whether I had any documents showing concern before the audit. Yes. That was when I opened my folder. I did not embellish. I did not call anyone names. I did not say my sister was spoiled or my parents had always favored her. I simply presented the record. My emails requesting the estate accounting. Dad's text saying this was not something to put in writing. The North Star notice. The recording transcript where Dad admitted the funds were redirected. Screenshots of BrightBell's major expenditures immediately after the transfer. The probate petition. Grandpa's note: "If numbers change, ask for paper." Agent Vega read that one twice. "Your grandfather wrote this?" "Yes." "When?" "Before he died, when he told me the estate distribution amounts." She nodded. Then she looked at the forged authorization. "You work in compliance?" "Yes." "That explains the folder." I almost smiled. My family calls it being difficult. Agent Vega's expression did not change, but something in her eyes softened. Difficult paperwork is often useful paperwork. That was the first kind thing any one official said to me. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever been called difficult because you asked where the money went, because you wanted documents, because you refused to let family feelings replace facts, then you know exactly what that IRS office felt like. It was not about greed. It was about being robbed and then asked to protect the people who stole from you. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what moment made you stop accepting explanations without paper. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. The public payoff happened 6 weeks later in a probate mediation room on the 4th floor of the Franklin County Courthouse. The room had beige walls, a long table, a coffee machine that sounded broken, and a window overlooking a parking garage. Present were me, Ellen Mercer, my father, my mother, Madison, Dad's attorney, Madison's business attorney, and a retired magistrate named Howard Bell, who had been brought in to mediate the estate dispute before the court hearing. The IRS was not in the room. That somehow made it worse for my family, because everyone knew they were still out there. Ellen arrived with 3 binders, one white, one blue, one red. She placed them in front of her like a woman setting a table for truth. Madison came in wearing a camel coat and sunglasses she did not remove until the magistrate asked her to. My mother looked pale and overdone, as if makeup could hold a family together. Dad looked exhausted. For the first time in my life, he did not look certain that his authority would be enough. The magistrate began. "We are here to discuss disputed estate distributions from the Arthur Lane estate, alleged misdirection of funds, and potential restitution before this matter proceeds further." Dad's attorney cleared his throat. "Our position remains that family discussions occurred regarding temporary support of BrightBell Media, which the parties understood would benefit both sisters through future returns." Ellen opened the white binder. "No." One word. The room went still. She placed the will summary on the table. Arthur Lane left $225,000 to Victoria Lane and $75,000 in structured trust to Madison Lane. The executor did not have authority to rewrite those amounts based on alleged future returns. Madison muttered, "He didn't understand my business." Magistrate Bell looked at her. "Ms. Lane, please let counsel speak." Ellen placed the transfer authorization beside the will. This document was used to move $185,000 from the estate account to BrightBell Media. It states Victoria Lane authorized the distribution. Dad looked down. My mother folded a tissue in half. Madison stared at the wall. Ellen then placed 3 samples of my real signature beside the authorization. Tax return. Mortgage closing document. Driver's license renewal. The signature does not match. Ms. Lane denies signing it. She denies authorizing it. She denies any family agreement. Dad's attorney said, signature disputes can be complex. Ellen opened the blue binder. Then let's simplify with contemporaneous documents. She read my email. Dad, I received a notice from North Star Bank showing a distribution to me for $185,000, but I did not receive this money and do not recognize the account. Please send the transfer authorization, account details, and estate accounting by Friday. Then she read Dad's text. This is not something to put in writing. The room went quiet. Magistrate Bell looked at my father. Mr. Lane, why did you write that? Dad swallowed. I was trying to avoid conflict. Ellen said, by avoiding records. He did not answer. Then she played the audio clip from my parents' kitchen. My voice asking, did you wire my inheritance to BrightBell Media? Dad's voice answering, yes. Mom saying, please don't tear this family apart over money. Madison saying Mom and Dad reallocated it. Temporarily. Nobody moved. Hearing your family's voices inside a courthouse room is strange. They sounded smaller than they had in my mother's kitchen. Less powerful. More like people making admissions under fluorescent light. Madison's attorney whispered to her. Madison's face flushed. The magistrate leaned back. Ms. Lane, he said to Madison, did BrightBell Media receive funds from the estate? She looked at her attorney. He nodded slightly. Yes. How much? I don't know exactly. Ellen opened the red binder. $185,000 initially. Additional payments totaling $22,400 appear to have been made from estate-related accounts to vendors connected to BrightBell events. My mother whispered, Richard? Dad closed his eyes. That was new. Apparently Mom had not known about the additional payments. Madison snapped. Those were business expenses. I looked at her. With my inheritance. She turned toward me. You were going to get it back. When? When the brand scaled. Ellen said calmly, BrightBell Media reported losses, unpaid vendors, and refund liabilities. Madison's mouth tightened. Startups lose money. Startups generally cannot start with forged beneficiary authorizations, Ellen said. The words landed hard. My father put one hand over his face. My mother began to cry silently. Madison looked at me with sudden hatred. You wanted this. I stared at her. No, Madison. I wanted my inheritance. You wanted me exposed. I wanted the accounting. You always hated that I had dreams. I almost laughed, but I did not give her that. Instead, I opened Grandpa's red ledger. I had brought it in my tote, not because it was legally necessary. Because I needed him in the room in the only way available. I turned to the page where he had written the estate notes and slid it toward the magistrate. This is my grandfather's handwriting, I said. He told me the amounts before he died because he was afraid exactly this would happen. Magistrate Bell read the page. Then the note. If numbers change, ask for paper. He looked at my father. Mr. Lane, your father anticipated a dispute? Dad's voice was hoarse. He was cautious. No, I said quietly. He knew us. That sentence did what shouting never could have done. It made the room honest. For 7 seconds, nobody defended themselves. Then the magistrate asked my father a simple question. Who signed Victoria Lane's name on the authorization? Dad stared at the table. My mother whispered, Richard. Madison looked at him. Dad? He took a long breath. I did. My mother made a sound like the air had been pushed out of her. Madison sat back. Her attorney closed his eyes. Dad continued, voice breaking. I signed it. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself Victoria would understand once Madison's business recovered. I told myself Dad wanted both girls taken care of. I looked at him. Grandpa wrote what he wanted. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I know. The confession did not feel like victory. It felt like watching a load-bearing wall crack in a house I used to live in. Ellen did not soften. Mr. Lane, are you prepared to agree to restitution of the misdirected funds, corrected estate accounting, amended tax reporting, and cooperation with any federal inquiries? Dad's attorney leaned toward him, whispering urgently. Dad looked at me. For once, he did not look at Mom first. He did not look at Madison, he looked at me. "Yes," he said. Madison stood. "You can't do this. BrightBell is already dead. I don't have the money." Ellen turned one page. "The restitution agreement includes repayment responsibility from BrightBell Media for funds received, and from the executor personally for unauthorized distribution. Asset recovery may include equipment, studio deposits, remaining inventory, tax refunds, and personal repayment terms." Madison laughed bitterly. "So I lose everything?" I looked at my sister. "No, you lose what was bought with what wasn't yours." She stared at me. For the first time, she had no caption for herself. The aftermath was not clean. People love stories where the truth lands, and everyone immediately becomes better. Real families are slower and uglier than that. Dad resigned as executor. A neutral fiduciary was appointed. Corrected estate accounting was filed. Amended tax documents had to be prepared. The IRS examination continued, though Ellen handled communications carefully. Dad's admission helped distinguish my role from the improper transfer, but it also exposed him to consequences I had spent months hoping to avoid. The family blamed me for those consequences at first. Mom called 3 days after mediation. "Your father is barely sleeping." I was sitting at my kitchen table with the red ledger in front of me. "I'm sorry to hear that." "He made a terrible mistake." "Yes. We need compassion." "I agree." "Then please tell Ellen not to be so aggressive." I looked out the window at the maple tree behind my townhouse. "Mom, compassion is not the same as covering up a forged signature." She began to cry. "He was trying to help your sister. He stole from one daughter to gamble on the other." "Victoria." "No," I said. "That is the sentence." She went quiet. For once, I did not fill the silence. Madison posted one final video on BrightBell's account before taking it down. She wore a white sweater, no makeup, and said she was stepping away from social media because family betrayal and legal trauma had made it impossible to continue creating. I saved it. Then I stopped watching her. That was a gift I gave myself. BrightBell's assets were liquidated. The pink velvet chairs sold for far less than Madison had paid. The neon sign went to a salon in Dayton. The cameras, lights, and editing equipment were sold through a business auction. The proceeds did not come close to covering what had been taken, but they became part of restitution. My father entered a repayment agreement for the remaining amount. He used part of his retirement savings. He sold a fishing boat he had bought after Grandpa died. That detail hurt more than I expected, because Grandpa had loved fishing, and Dad selling the boat felt like consequence and grief tied in the same knot. Madison moved out of her studio and back into my parents' house for a while. Mom called it regrouping. I called it what it was: collapse. The IRS ultimately cleared me from liability tied to the improper transfer after reviewing the documents, signatures, and corrected reporting. I received a formal letter stating that based on the information reviewed, I was not treated as having received the distribution for tax purposes. I read that letter in my car outside the post office. Then I cried, not because of taxes, because a federal agency had acknowledged something my family fought for months to deny. I did not receive what they said I received. There is a strange relief in official language when your family has been drowning you in emotional fog. Eventually, after fees, delays, partial recoveries, and repayment arrangements, I received my inheritance. Not all at once. Not as Grandpa intended. But enough to pay off part of my mortgage, rebuild my savings, and set aside funds for the future he wanted me to have. The first thing I bought was not furniture or a vacation. It was a fireproof document safe. Then I bought a better one. When Ellen laughed at that, I said, "Don't judge my joy." She said I would never judge secure storage. My relationship with Dad became something I did not recognize. For 3 months we did not speak, except through attorneys. Then, on Grandpa's birthday in January, he left a voicemail. "Vicky, it's Dad. I went to the cemetery today. I don't know why I'm telling you that. I guess because I stood there and realized he knew I might fail you. And I did. I'm not asking you to call back. I just wanted to say I'm sorry without your mother translating it. I signed your name. I told myself stories. I was wrong. I listened to it once. Then again. Then I saved it. Accountability, like evidence, deserves preservation. I did not call back that day. I called 2 weeks later. The conversation was short. He cried. I did not. Not because I was cold. Because I had cried so much earlier when nobody was listening. Can we ever be okay? He asked. I don't know. What do I do? You keep paying what you owe. You tell the truth when people ask. You stop asking me to protect Madison from consequences. He breathed shakily. Okay. And Dad? Yes. You never sign my name again. Not on a birthday card. Not on a group gift. Not as a joke. His voice broke. I won't. Madison did not apologize for almost a year. Her first attempt was a text. I was under so much pressure. I didn't know Dad did that. I replied. You knew the money was not yours. She did not answer for 3 weeks. Then she wrote, I thought you didn't need it. I replied, need is not ownership. Another month passed. Finally, on a Sunday afternoon in March, she asked to meet at a coffee shop in Worthington, near Grandpa's old house. I went. Because Ellen said unresolved silence can become its own form of control if you are afraid of every conversation. Madison looked different. Less polished. Hair in a low ponytail. No lashes. No camera voice. She sat across from me with both hands around a paper cup. I hated you, she said. That was not the apology I expected. I almost appreciated it. For what? For making stability look easy. I looked at her. It wasn't easy. I know that now. No, I said. You know it was expensive. That's different. She flinched. I deserve that. Yes. She stared down at her coffee. I knew Mom and Dad were moving money into BrightBell. I didn't know Dad signed your name until later. When, later? Her mouth tightened. After the first demand letter. And you said nothing. I panicked. You benefited. Yes. There it was, one clean word. I sat back. Madison's eyes filled. I'm sorry I let them make you the selfish one when I was spending your money. I waited. I'm sorry I posted about alignment when it was Grandpa's money. I'm sorry I acted like your life was boring because I needed my failure to look visionary. I'm sorry I called it betrayal when you asked for proof. I looked toward the window. Across the street, 2 women walked dogs under bare trees. Ordinary life again, moving past extraordinary pain. Thank you for saying it clearly, I said. Do you forgive me? I looked back at her. Not fully. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. Okay. But I believe you understand more than you did. That's fair. Fair. A word rarely used correctly in our family. Our relationship did not become close. It became honest enough to be distant without theater. That was better than what we had before. My mother struggled the longest. She had spent decades arranging reality around Madison's fragility. When the arrangement collapsed, she had to see her own hands in it. At first, she tried to turn herself into the victim. I just wanted both my daughters happy, she said. I answered, no. You wanted one daughter rescued, and the other quiet. She stopped calling for a while. Then one evening, she came to my townhouse with a cardboard box. Inside were things from Grandpa's house she said I should have had earlier. His mechanical pencils, a jar of peppermints gone soft with age, a photograph of him holding me as a baby, and another red ledger book, older than the one I had. I found it in your father's closet, she said. Why was it there? Her mouth trembled. I think he took it after the funeral. I opened the ledger. Inside were entries from years earlier, birthday checks, home repairs, gifts, notes about me, notes about Madison. One line made my throat close. Victoria pays attention because others make her. I sat down. Mom began crying. He saw it, she whispered. Yes. I didn't want to. I looked at her. Why? Because if I saw it, I would have had to change. That was the most honest thing my mother ever said to me. I did not hug her immediately. I let the truth stand between us, without rushing to make it pretty. Then I said, "You can change now." She nodded. "I'm trying." That was all I could ask at that moment. On the first anniversary of the IRS interview, I took Grandpa's red ledger to his grave. It was a warm August morning. The grass was damp, the sky pale blue, and someone had left a small flag near a veteran's marker 2 rows over. I sat on the ground beside his headstone and read the note again. "If numbers change, ask for paper." I did, I said aloud. A groundskeeper in the distance kept trimming around stones. Birds moved in the oak tree near the fence. Life did not pause for closure. It rarely does. I told Grandpa what happened. The mediation, Dad's confession, the IRS letter, the repayments, Madison's apology, Mom finding the other ledger. I told him I bought a document safe, which would have made him laugh. I told him I used part of the inheritance to fund a scholarship at the community college for students pursuing compliance, accounting, or records management. That felt right. A scholarship for people who know paper matters. I named it the Arthur Lane Records Scholarship. The first recipient was a 39-year-old mother of 2 studying bookkeeping after a divorce. In her thank you letter, she wrote, "I want to build a life where numbers are clear and nobody can tell me I imagined what happened." I placed that letter inside the ledger. Some inheritances grow best when they become protection for someone else. I still work in compliance. I still ask annoying questions. I still keep receipts. I still screenshot things that feel wrong. But now, when someone calls me difficult, I do not automatically shrink. Difficult is what dishonest people call the person who slows the lie down. My parents gave my inheritance to my sister's influencer brand. The money bought lights, cameras, velvet chairs, brunches, branded candles, and a fantasy that collapsed under the weight of its own invoices. Then the IRS asked me one question. "Did you authorize this transfer?" No one word. A whole family history behind it. And every piece of paper Grandpa told me to keep waiting patiently. For the moment truth needed backup. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been called selfish for asking basic questions, greedy for wanting what was left to you, or difficult because you refused to let family rewrite numbers with feelings. If Victoria's story reached you, I hope you remember that documentation is not distrust when people have already chosen secrecy. Paper can protect what love should have protected first. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the proof that finally answers for you. So tell me, if your family secretly gave your inheritance to the sibling they always favored, would you keep trying to reason with them? Or would you let the audit ask the one question they could not answer?